Greetings. We're trying to get chaos into the picture. Oh, there you are. Chaos. Chaos, you are in video. Welcome. This is another of my little, what should we call these? Corona conversations. Um, FDR started the fireside chats, and Dennis Prager follows with his fireside chats. He has his bulldog Otto, so that was chaos. And I guess we'll call these Corona conversations. And I'm a bit surprised, but apparently there's some popular demand for these things. So I thought I'd do another one and talk just a little bit about the Corona situation and really more about the economics of the response to it, the shutdown. I've actually done a couple of lengthy interviews on this subject. I think I probably look better with my hat. Better keep that on. But there are a couple of points that keep coming up whenever I'm talking to people about this, and people seem to be pretty interested in, what do you think about this government response and the so-called stimulus? And so I wanted to say just a couple of quick words about that. And first, maybe what we should think about, I think what I want to most emphasize is that what we're dealing with is not the business cycle. This is not the normal kind of recession or depression or anything like that, whatever normal might be. This is not the business cycle. If you close businesses by government decree, then there's no output, and of course, incomes fall. That's not a recession. It's not a business cycle. And so any kind of response to figure out what to do has to take that into account. Let me start out by just saying how I see this. And I think I've mentioned this to some of you before, but the woman who cuts my hair she's raising, she has three daughters. One is in college. The daughter in college studies engineering. And I know just from the conversations we have when I'm getting my hair cut that my hair cutter helps her with her college payments, is saving for the other girls' college. They pay rent. She, of course, puts food on the table and those sorts of things. And, this shutdown means no income for a month. She works for a salon. That salon has no income for a month either. They pay rent to a strip mall. The strip mall has maybe some of the other, I suspect most of the places are shut down. So they've got a little income, but they've been cut. Now I imagine that company that owns that has perhaps mortgages or something like that, and so they're going to have difficult time making payments. So there's this whole chain that is being shut down, and I think it's pretty serious stuff. Now, that's the story. You think about people behind it and individuals. I know people who have lost their jobs from this, not just been laid off temporarily, but permanent job loss because of the economic harm that their firms have suffered already. But it's a serious situation. One of my HET students actually shared this with me. His father works for J.D. Power, and these are data. I'm going to talk about a little bit that the J.D. Power Company developed in their Pulse survey, March 27 to 29th on financial services. This is released on March 30th, and I have permission to go ahead and talk about this. Excuse me. Let me just give you a few figures here. 71% of the people surveyed responded that they thought the pandemic was extremely serious. Okay, great. Well, I guess that could be right. Asked about the question of whether this was going to do, how prepared people were to deal with this. Well, actually, the question for financial stress, 88% said psychologically they feel great financial stress from this, that they feel threatened by this. The question, how prepared are you to deal with this financially? 30% of the people surveyed said not at all. Another 51% said somewhat. What that means somewhat, I don't know. But another question was, how many of you, what percentage have you missed a monthly payment because of this shutdown? 39% said yes. Credit card was the number one monthly payment, kind of monthly payment that had been missed. And you think that typically the minimum monthly payment on a credit card is not very big. Auto loan was number two, mortgage was number three. 29% of the people said that they did not, that either they had contacted their lender to ask about delaying a payment, or else they didn't know they could do that. 25% said they hadn't done it, but they were thinking that maybe soon they would need to. Great. That's only 46% of the people surveyed said, we're not worried about having to make monthly payments at present. Another little factoid here. 62% of the people surveyed said in order to do their job, they have to leave the home. They can't do it they can't do it at home. Now for my kind of a job, I fell under a different category because I'm one where they say, well, it's more convenient if we can, it's better if we don't have to do it at home, but if we have to, we can. And of course I can sit at home and got my books and my other things here and can make videos, but most people cannot do that, is what this suggests. Not surprising. 29% of the people surveyed said they had hours of work already reduced. That's lost income for them. 24% said they had a temporary job loss. That's about a quarter of the people surveyed. 20% said that one result of the shutdown so far is that they have not been able to get enough food to eat. Okay, this is where we're talking about maybe a 1 month shutdown here. What happens if it goes longer? Well, those effects magnify. There were figures on savings and things like this, and the extent to which people have savings to get them through. It's not a very promising situation. With half of people, I think it was about half of the people saying they had $5,000 or less. I think it was 44% or something like that. Well, it's not a very good situation to be in if you lose your income, because you can't live very long on $5,000. So what is the question that comes up in these interviews that I do? What do you think about the stimulus? Can we stimulate, what should the government do, or something like this? And frankly, stimulus is such a wrong-headed notion here, because the problem is not that aggregate demand has fallen or that people have made bad investments or these, it's not the business cycle. It's not something where a government response can make it, possibly make it go away. And those kinds of remedies are out of place. Maybe always out of place, but certainly in this case, the only thing that gets the economy going again is to let people go back to work. That is, to lift or reduce the quarantines and the lockdowns. Now, whether that's epidemiologically wise is another question, and what those trade-offs are is an important question. But it's one that needs to be taken into account, that these are real losses that are being inflicted that way, and that's through the lockdown. The only way to end those is by going back, letting people go back to work. Now, here's what strikes me as being the difficult question with these government programs. One is that there are going to be cash payments made directly to people, and in one sense, maybe that's warranted. That, at least economically, that might make sense. And here's why. If you take people who can't make monthly payments, who can't pay rent, who can't buy food, who can't make their mortgage payments, who can't, just pay for their day-to-day living, these kinds of payments would get them through a short-term shutdown to keep them from financial ruin, and to keep the financial system from getting seized up and broken down, and to have many people going into bankruptcy or default all at the same time. Does it make the problem go away? No. It simply transfers the problem to other people. It spreads it out over, in essence, the economy as a whole. That's damaging, but it might be the lesser damage. What about payments to business, or the small business loans that they're now talking about? No, I had something else I was going to wave. Here's one from one of the banks. Who is this from? Oh, this is actually from the federal. Sorry, this is from the federal government, the Small Business Administration. If you can see this, they have a small business loan program now. Just announced. The details came out, I think, yesterday, and I downloaded also from one of my banks some of the details. But basically, $350 billion in loans short term for small businesses in order to, it's the Paycheck Protection Program, in order to keep employees on the payroll. And so long as businesses borrow and then keep their employees on the payroll, you go ahead and pay them. They receive zero. It's a 0% interest loan, a fairly long time to pay it back, up to $10 million. There's some kind of cap on how high the salaries can be. And if you, I think that what it is that if you don't fire these people, you basically may not have to repay it at all if you keep your full staff. Does that make sense? Look, if these businesses, here's the thing that I greatly worry about. A short-term shutdown, we can survive that. If we go long enough that these businesses go bankrupt and close, then when the quarantine is lifted, when the lockdown is ended, people who have been unemployed won't have jobs to go back to. They will be unemployed, and then you've got a long-term structural problem that is going to be a real difficult thing to get out of. If we have, say, 1 month, 1.5 month shutdown, and when it ends, people can go back to their regular jobs, we'll be a lot better off. So again, in that sense, it might prevent, it's damaging, but it might prevent much greater damage. So as an economist, I have a hard time saying, it seems like the way to do it. I have a hard time saying no to that. If that's the goal. And the goal should be to keep the economy going, I think. And of course, then there's all kinds of garbage in the stimulus bill. We're going to pay money to the Kennedy Center to remodel it or something. And they're going to put $75 million to the Kennedy Center. Where is Comrade Sanders at this point? He was complaining that we had 18 brands of deodorant when children are hungry. How about that one, Comrade Sanders? Or their money for the Green New Deal and idiocies like that. Come on, those kinds of projects. We don't need that kind of garbage. This is a serious problem, and it might make sense to take on federal debt to keep people from being financially ruined and businesses from financial ruin, but not to put in all this pork for your pet projects. Anyway, that's how I see some of this. Well, the ultimate goal has to be to end this lockdown as soon as is possible. Make it as targeted as possible so that we don't have everything shut down. And there are other problems where the longer it goes, the more you disrupt supply chains. And you begin realizing that things you thought were not essential are essential. Most of you have read the paper iPencil, and it's how many people, what industries and what jobs does it take to make a thing of bottled water? That's actually tap water, probably. It comes from a well. It's good. But I think you'll find that I think we will find that the supply chains are much more complicated than many of the planners in places like Lansing and Washington, D.C. imagine. So we need to get the economy back up and running as soon as we can. And a long quarantine makes that more difficult. And at some point, we hit a breaking point where there are bankruptcies and it becomes really difficult. Anyway, that's my thoughts on that. I always try to end on an upbeat, happy note. Let's see. What is a happy note? Well, that was the destruction of the economy probably isn't one, but I suppose that it will have to do. There must be some positive point I can come up with. You know, hey, be happy. We're not in Russia and we're not in China. We are a heck of a lot better off. So I guess on that happy note, let's just call it good and stay healthy, stay well, study hard, read a lot of economics, hard, stay well, healthy, read a lot of, anyway, 4 or 5 points. That's good. All right.